Computer. Greetings, everyone. We welcome you to our second session on this study of the signs in the Gospel of John. And the second sign is healing the royal official's son in Capernaum. And the text, I'll put in the chat too, the text is John 4:46 through 54. John 4:46 through 54. And this time we don't really have any jumping around to do that I know of. So you can kind of mark that and have that in front of you. John 4:46 through 54. And before we read, let's do a swift catch up from where Jesus was at the last miracle to where he is in this one, because these are chronological, and it might be helpful sometimes for us to kind of, I don't know, just for familiarity with John, just to kind of follow Jesus on his little journey here. So we're going to look, so flip back a little bit to the wedding at Cana, and you can see, of course, he was in Cana of Galilee. So the way John tells it, that's where he was. But then the Passover of the temple was near. And so in verse 2:13, Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And there he talks about, he cleans and cleanses the temple by turning over the tables. Now, does something seem strange to you about that story being where it is in John? Diane, you're muted. What's that?
It's fairly early in the book.
It's very early. In fact, in the other Gospels, it said his passion story. But John puts it up front. I'll leave it to you to ponder that, and some other time I'll be glad to share with you some, or if you want to, we can talk about the reasons that John has it here. But it's a curious thing. And then he goes to visit in chapter 3. Who does he go to visit? Nicodemus. And that's where you get the good old John 3:16 and all there. So he is visiting Nicodemus. He's already having this early conversation with a leader of the Jews. And then in chapter 3, verse 22 and following, there's a lot of dialogue and discourse. So we don't really know where or when that happened exactly. But then we get some journeying in chapter 4. Now, it says, chapter 4, verse 1, Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard all that was going on. So he left Judea and started back to Galilee, but he had to go through Samaria. Now, y'all geography bees here, and Jim, I'm gonna look at you, because whereabouts would he normally have to go through Samaria to go to leave Judea and go to Galilee?
You certainly can go that way.
Yeah.
Most of the time, my understanding is that the Jews would circumvent Samaria, but it would certainly be a way one could go to get there. And depending on where you're going in Judea, it would even be if you're going to Jericho, it'd be a shorter route.
Okay.
But going to Jerusalem, I don't know if it makes any difference.
It wasn't way out of the way, but it was. But Jews would avoid it sometimes.
You got to realize that whole country fits between Raleigh and the coast. I mean, it's not that big an area for anything to be, but so far out of the way.
Right. Okay. So there's something there, but we need not necessarily read too much into it. It does give occasion for Jesus to encounter the woman at the well, and so that's it could be just as much John's reason for putting it, telling the story there. But in any event, Then we get to chapter 4, verse 43, right before our text. And it says, when the 2 days were over, he went from that place to Galilee. For Jesus himself had testified that a prophet has no honor in the prophet's own country. Now that sounds familiar because of the time he said that in Nazareth. But it just kind of made its way among the sayings source into John. When he came to Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him, since they had seen all he had done in Jerusalem at the festival. Now that's referring back to the temple and the trip to Jerusalem, for they too had gone to the festival. So isn't that interesting? News that kind of traveled back. So then our story begins. And there's a lot going on in this story, much more than it might appear at first. So let's unpack it. Would anybody volunteer to read our text for today, starting at verse 46 and ending at verse 54, the end of chapter 4? Any version is fine. Just
once more he visited Cana in Galilee, where he had turned the water into wine. And there was a certain royal official whose son lay sick at Capernaum. When this man heard that Jesus had arrived in Galilee from Judea, he went to him and begged him to come and heal his son, who was close to death. Unless you people see miraculous signs and wonders, Jesus told him, you will never believe. The royal official said, Sir, come down before my child dies. Jesus replied, you may go. Your son will live. The man took Jesus at his words and departed. While he was still on the way, his servant met him with the news that his son was living. When he inquired as to the time when his son had gotten better, they said to him, the fever left him yesterday at the 7th hour. Then the father realized that this was the exact time at which Jesus had said to him, your son will live. So he and all his household believed. This was the second miraculous sign that Jesus performed, having come from Judea to Galilee.
Oh, again, thank you, Fran. I'm having flashbacks to Christmas cantatas when you read scripture for us. I love it. I love it. You've just got just a character, you and Dan both, to your reading voice. Thank you for reading that for us. Yeah. Okay. So we start in verse 46 and we see that he has come back and when he came again to Cana. Now, isn't that interesting? He came to the Cana region when this happened, and where he had changed the water into wine. John makes sure to tell us that because he wants to make sure that we've linked this to the first sign, just like he says at the end of the passage. This was the second sign that Jesus did after coming from Judea, from Galilee to Galilee. So we got our signs going here. We got the signs thing going. And we're back in Cana. And if you remember from last week, not that many people knew what Jesus did. Remember, only the servants and his disciples. So now he's got a bit more of a public audience. Awareness about him is growing. And one of the things that I mentioned last week that John is really into is the growing awareness of who Jesus is. And as you work your way through the Gospel of John, you're going to keep seeing this. Now these people believed, and now these people believed, and then these people believed. And there's this expanding effect of who's believing now. And look who it is who has come to Jesus now. Remember, he's only done one miracle, and he hasn't gone around doing a lot of preaching and teaching in the area, has he? He went to Jerusalem and did this, and then he stopped in Samaria Now the Samaritans probably did. Nobody probably now there was a lot of Samaritans that believed in him from that woman at the well story. A lot of them. In fact, John makes a point to tell us in that story that a bunch of people came and said they told the woman that they believed in Jesus, not just because of what she had told them, but because of what they had heard and come to believe. So there's this coming to believe in Jesus that's kind of a expanding force happening here. And now he's captured the attention of a royal official. Does anybody have, I don't really know if this was a royal official in the court of Herod or in the court of Pilate or something. I don't know. It's anybody have any ideas, any thoughts on that? A royal official is a little vague, but it's specific enough to tell us that this was somebody important. And if it's a Jewish royal official, then kind of like Nicodemus, who in the previous chapter, they've got something on the line. You know, messing with Jesus and talking to Jesus is not necessarily a popular thing, especially since he's already, in John's telling, already turned over the temple. So this guy's going out on a limb. Well, why is he really going out on a limb?
Because of his child.
His child, his son. And you know, I once, you know, I never know what to make of faith healing stuff on TV sometimes, you know, like the TV preachers and the faith thing. But then I stop and think, goodness, if my own child needed healing, would anything keep me from doing whatever I could? You know, I don't know. I just, it's easy for me to sit back. I don't know, you ever feel that way, to kind of be skeptical about that, but then look at the passion, look at the desire that he comes for his son. That's really touching. He describes this situation of need.
And it's low risk.
Yeah.
Asking Jesus to help you is low risk, except for the perception of the people.
The perception, yeah, except for the perception. But right,
personally, it's low risk.
That personally, yeah. And he doesn't bring the boy with him, does he? And neither does Jesus go to the man's house.
Right.
Which is interesting. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. But verse 46 already juxtaposes this reference to Cana and the new situation of need, and anticipates another miracle. So that in verse 47, the gospel narrative does not document any healing by Jesus prior to this story in John. He's not done. This is the first healing in John. But we've already heard that Jesus is the giver of life. Back in verses 13 and 14, the woman at the well, we've already come to hear that he can give life. And if you think about it, somehow this royal official figured, from what he'd heard, that Jesus could not only sort of know the woman at the well. He didn't heal her. He didn't heal anybody at the wedding. So this royal official is coming with more faith, with maybe more faith in Jesus than we might expect, because if this is the first healing, it's not like Jesus sort of walked up and saw somebody who needed healing and then healed him, and then everybody went, "Oh, Jesus can heal somebody." No, this man comes running up asking for healing, and he's to be. It's a new thing that John is showing us here.
I'm not so sure that it's a new thing. That would assume that we don't have the incorporated events of the three other gospels. He begins his
Sure.
ministry in Galilee
Sure.
as a healing ministry. He was a well-known healer slash
The other
physician.
gospels. Yeah.
And so because John, and I've always believed John was written much later.
Yes.
I think that to make that leap, we're ignoring
The other
what
gospel.
the other gospels tell us about the early ministry of Jesus being a healing ministry.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. I wouldn't want to ignore that. You're right. You're entirely right. The word absolutely could have spread because the other gospels do launch him into this, healing here, healing there. Maybe the fact that John didn't tell us about those is his way of building up this whole signs thing and this whole revelation of who Jesus is. Maybe John, sometimes it's important. Sometimes we learn a lot about what a gospel writer is trying to do by what they don't do. It's kind of like you listen to your family and or you listen to your kid or something and you listen and they tell you what happened, but then you also take notice of what they didn't tell you. I do that with my girls. Like, okay, well, you telling it your way. Now, what did your friend say? Or something like that, Fran, yeah.
Let's look at this strangely also.
Yeah.
Let's say that John is the only person that ever wrote about Jesus, okay?
Okay.
Wouldn't you think that a person hearing about a man turning water into wine would certainly be able to heal a sick child?
I mean, it's not illogical. So yeah, I mean, it's not illogical, but I think noticing that
the other,
yeah,
he knew about from the other.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He might have heard about the water. He might
what John was doing.
He might have heard about the water and the wine, but he might not have,
Oh, he is in Cali, he's in the same area.
Yeah.
So it seems like to me that the people that went to the wedding, if they had 50 gallons of wine to drink, somebody would have heard about it that hadn't been invited.
If they can remember what they did. I think we have a combination. Hey, Sarah, welcome.
Hi.
Hey, dear. I think we have a combination of things going on that both Jim is right. I really think you're right, Jim, that we can't throw out the baby in the bathwater. We can't forget the larger narrative.
Absolutely.
But what we can do is say John, and because, as I also agree totally with you, Jim, John is probably the last or the latest of the gospel writers because he seems to have more of the sources at his hands and various reasons. And there's a community that came out, a lot of things we could go into, but about the dating.
Choosing for a reason.
But it could be, that John is wanting us to jump from, he wants us to make the cognitive jump from Cana, the wedding, to this story, which he very clearly, he's like, this was the second time Jesus went to the. What you thinking, buddy?
I'd like to also throw in that the majority, a rather thin majority probably now, because it's been swinging back the other way some, do not believe that the Gospel of John was written by the same disciple of John.
Yeah.
The dates for the writing would have made a disciple of Jesus, even if it had been a teenager.
Yeah.
By the time the Gospel of John is written, it would have made him well over 100 years old. And so the majority of scholars don't. Now, there are some that want to say that the dating of the passage is maybe 20 years earlier, and that way we can have an old man, John, recounting the history. But I think sometimes we assume that because there was a disciple named John and we have a book named John, that they're the one and the same, or a disciple named Matthew and a book named Matthew, that they are one and the same. And there is no biblical evidence of that being the case at all.
Yeah, that's true. There's authorship and dating are this whole, there's a whole thing that it's a whole I don't know what you want to call it, a subject of every biblical book And in a lot of your good Bibles, you'll have a little introductory essay at the start of the book of the Bible, of that book of the Bible, that will sometimes speak to authorship and dating. And sometimes it depends on which Bible publisher you read, but some of them soft pedal it a little bit more than others, because sometimes they know their audiences, and some of their audiences don't want to think that, they want, if it says John, it was John, and so scholars sometimes have to, and careful Bible readers like yourselves, the thing to remember is, I think for us, is whoever did it, whenever they did it, we read what's on the page, not just what somebody told us or what assumptions we bring to the page. That's important. And so, yeah, quite right. When you want to concentrate what's on the page and start at the page. Now that's actually faithful, isn't it? If you want to learn about the Bible, where are you supposed to start? With what somebody told you, or with what's on the page? Start with the Bible. Start with the Bible. So it's always important to remind us to read what's here and not read in things that are not here. Quite right. Okay, so we've got this anticipation of the raising of Lazarus going on, because this young man, this boy, is going to be raised. And if you'll remember, the raising of Lazarus is the last of if you want to number them, the 7 signs that most people have done. Which is going to be the culmination of this whole sign journey that we're going to go on. Plus, it is then the prefiguring of the resurrection of Jesus. So this one, of all the not all the miracle story, in fact, there's 2 other signs that are going to be healing stories, but this one is as close to a resurrection story as you're going to get, because the boy is at the point of death. So this one is like, he's, there's that. So from 47 to 48. Now, 48. We need to talk about verse 48. When you hear what Jesus said there, to him, it says, Jesus said to him, unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe. Now, let me just get your take on what Jesus was, paraphrase what you think Jesus was saying to him right there. And if you know all about the Greek, don't give it away yet. Paraphrase what you think it says based on in the English. I'm not gonna criticize you. Just tell me what does it sound like he's saying, and what's his meaning by saying something like this?
I would say he's just saying that without me doing sleight of hand and magic, you won't have faith. That you've got, your faith must come before the miracles. The miracles can't come before your faith.
Okay. Would you say, and in that same vein, would you say it's a little bit of a pre-rebuke of the man?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you sense, does it have a negative tone?
A negative tone, yes.
Okay.
He's just saying, hey, why do I have to perform for you to believe?
Okay. Yeah, Linda, unmute yourself.
Oh, I hear frustration here.
Okay.
And so, I don't know. And every once in a while I hear that frustration, even toward the end. So, but that's me. So I'm hearing that.
Okay. Good. You guys, well done. Speaking up. Don't be afraid to speak up. What would you think if I told you? Now, don't worry about how he said it to the man. Just read the quote. Unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe. Okay, take the man out of the picture just for the moment. What if I told you that in the Greek, both of the words for you, Y-O-U, are plural? Because they are. What do you think, Linda? Does that change anything?
Well, my version says unless you people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So it's more of a general comment rather than a specific comment. He's included in the people, I think, but it's a general
It's
comment.
more general. It's more general. He's speaking, he says to him, but he's saying it like, you ever say something to, I don't know, maybe I get the sense he's kind of, you ever say something to somebody, but you kind of know everybody else is listening and you're kind of saying it to everybody. You want everybody to hear, and or you're making a point, right? The other thing is, we scholars assert that Jesus's words are some scholars, many, you will find some who agree that this was a rebuke to those who base their faith only on signs. Okay. But others say, I want you to think about this, that Jesus has a more subtle purpose, because if his words are simply a rebuke, then one might expect that Jesus would refuse the man's request. In fact, something similar happens. You don't have to go look these up, but in Matthew 15:26 and Mark 7:27, there is a, in those stories, there's a standoffish. There's a, I don't know, do you believe? If you believe, then I'm going to do the sign. But he doesn't do that here. Verse 48 could be read as more as less of a criticism and more of an astute observation on Jesus's part, and might be interpreted in the same vein as in chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. Now, wait a minute, chapter 2, verses 3 and 4, that was last week's reading. So let's look at that. Chapter 2, verses 3 and 4 say, when the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to them, they have no wine. And Jesus said to her, woman, what concern is that to you and me? My hour has not yet come. Remember, we made the leap that he was saying, telling his mom, none of our business, woman, Now, the woman part, yeah, that's awkward. We talked about that last week. But, and there may have been some rebuke. And look, I'm not saying there wasn't some rebuke in what he said here. There could be. And many have said there is. We're not going to get anywhere kind of arguing whether he was rebuking or not. But we want to do something we remembered earlier that Jim rightly pointed out. Let's read what's on the page. And not necessarily read into it, because there are other stories where he will say, oh, ye of little faith, kind of stuff. And it's not always what's going on. Jesus, here's what I think is going on. Jesus will act, but his actions will not meet the expectations of the signs and wonders people might be looking for. His actions will be governed by his will, not human expectations and demands. So he's still making his point. He just might not have been one of those, oh, ye of little faith moments. Now, what does that mean for you and me? It means that just because we're looking for something from Jesus and Jesus doesn't necessarily deliver it the way we think it's going to be, that doesn't mean it's the wrong way. Sometimes we're looking for Jesus to do X, Y, and Z, and Jesus wants to do L, M, and W, and whatever those mean. But it's in doing whatever he wants to do that he reveals his sign to us. And he makes us realize, something we might not have realized before. And just every word that he has to say to us about faith is not necessarily a rebuke. He could just be making the general point of signs and wonders, which is the whole. In fact, if we had to make a slogan for this whole study, 7 signs, it might be that quote in verse 48. Unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe. Doesn't mean that's not necessarily. Remember, there was another passage where he was rebuking the people because he said, you came to, it's in one of the synoptic gospels, and Jim or somebody might have to help me with my chapters and verses. I don't know, we Methodists are, the Baptists have their chapters and verses down. We Methodists are still working on that. But he goes to them and says something like, you've come to me because you want to see me do tricks, essentially. You remember that? But I've come to reveal the Father. So there's a little something going on here.
Taylor?
Yeah.
Or
What are you
something.
thinking?
He's asking this question, unless you people see signs and wonders, you will never believe. The official never saw him heal his son.
That's exactly where I was going next, Fran.
Oh,
Good job.
Taylor,
Yeah, buddy.
Taylor, let me jump in a minute.
Yeah.
Go back to your why he tore up the temple when he did. Remember his mother, he said to his mother, "It's not my time."
Yeah.
The next time in our study here we see anything, it's he has been to the temple, and maybe this is misplaced, and when John is just changing the time around. But what a way to get somebody's attention and start stuff. Go in there and tear up the temple, and you get all of the priests and everybody upset. And so, okay, here I am.
Yeah.
I'm getting ready to start.
Yeah.
And maybe this is him saying, "I'm starting. Y'all watch and see. You're gonna see what I can do."
Maybe I do agree with the scholars who think that John put that story early on purpose for some reason. And I do think you're onto something. What happened? We're studying sign source, but there's another parallel thing going on in John. If you read John from 1 to chapter whatever it is, there's also an escalation of tensions with the Jews that starts very slowly and then builds and builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And putting the cleansing of the temple at the front is setting the stage for confrontation with the Jews. And through this confrontation with the Jews, he will reveal himself, and we will come to know more about him. Fran, you made a cool point. Did y'all notice this in this story? Jesus doesn't go to the house and never sees the boy. And we're going to get into the whole thing too about how the servants came and met the man halfway back to the house and told him when the boy was healed. So we'll get into that in a minute. But we don't see Jesus do anything. In fact, we don't see him. We know it's done. It's passive voice, right? It's been done. He says, he calls him down. He says, "Go, your son will live." So it's been done. He doesn't go to Capernaum. The boy's in Capernaum, right? Because he lay ill in Capernaum. We see him in 46. We don't meet the healed one. Like the royal official, we hear a report, and it does not lead to the official's belief. The official's first believes in the very way Jesus says does not happen, and then seemingly re-believes after talking with his slaves. So there's a strange kind of mix. The belief and the sign are getting kind of all mixed in together here. Jesus is saying, is linking belief and sign. Now in John, here's another special thing about John. When John talks about belief and believing, he really has a specific meaning behind that. And John will again and again talk about this person saw this, went through this, Jesus said such and such, whatever, and then they believed. And we kind of take that for granted, we hear that, we believe, well, of course they did, it's Jesus. But John has this ongoing revelation of who Jesus is, that is every time those are little buzzwords in the book of John. Whenever you come across them and you see, and Peter believed, and the so-and-so believed and this person did not believe. And because they did not believe, this happened. That's a whole thing in John. That's a whole thing. But what happens? The man goes back. The man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and started on his way. So he's taken Jesus at his word that his boy's healed. He's not said, can I get a receipt for this? Right? As he's going down, his slaves meet him. So they've come up. And why have they come up to come tell him? Because they saw the healing and they were like, we got to go run and tell the master, the royal official. They told him that his child is alive. So then he asked them the hour when he began to recover. And they said to him, yesterday at 1 PM, the fever left him. The father realized that this was the hour when Jesus said to him, your son will live. Then it says, so he himself believed. Then who else believed? His whole household, who also didn't meet Jesus. Now, have you ever, people have stories about stuff like this, don't they? About, I had a feeling that something happened, and then I found out that my child had a car accident, and I had that feeling right at the same time. I don't want to get too X-Files on us here, but, but there's something really special going on. And this is the way, if you remember, what John's trying to do is show you this ever expanding revelation of who Jesus is. And now it's happened, and the royal official puts 2 and 2 together, or 1 and 1 together, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and realizes that that's Jesus. And then he believes. So we've got this funny chemistry of signs and wonders and belief going on here. It's what do we make of it? A lot of things, but we'll get to that. The final verse says, this is the second sign, Cana sign, like the first one, that results in the faith of those who witnessed it. Yet the story of the second miracle also contains a caution about faith being based on signs and wonders, which we talked about. John 2:11 holds, now flip back to John 2:11 real quick. John 2:11 holds the interpretive key. Jesus' disciples saw him turn water into wine at Cana, but it was not the miracle in and of itself that led to their faith. Rather, they saw Jesus' glory in the sign. And it was Jesus, not the miracle, that they believed. It was Jesus, not the miracle, that they believed. In a similar way, the royal official moves beyond a preliminary faith in the miraculous power of Jesus' word. In other words, the faith that got him to go all the way up there to go meet him, but is completed in faith in verse 53, when he himself believes. The two Cana signs are alike in that those who witness them are able to see the revelation of Jesus' identity in and through the miracle. The first Cana sign revealed Jesus' glory. The second reveals his ability to give life. The water and the wine is a big deal. But as we said last week, it was water and wine. The second one reveals his ability to give life. And we begin now to look at, as I've been talking to you guys about signs and wonders, right? What do we do with these in our lives? Now we can begin from this story to think about Jesus and see this story as a reminder that he gives life. Where are some ways you see Jesus giving life around you and in you and in other places and in places in the world? And What signs and wonders do you see that point to Jesus as the giver of life?
Nature.
Sarah, what'd you say?
Nature.
In nature. Oh, that's a good one. I mean, I love nature I love watching those National Geographics, and the BBC has those cool things now. And you see these regenerative properties, and you see these virus fighting properties and abilities. Yeah, nature. Where else do you see Jesus as and see signs and wonders that reveal life? Yeah, Linda.
I've been in situations that where people were really desperate, and they were able to come to a place or come to a person. And when I say come to a place, I mean that there were people in this place that were able to help them. And so that for me, it was life-giving. It was restoring. It elevated them from, desperation and to something more hopeful. And so, and I've seen that in the work that I've done. So a lot.
So
a
lot.
For me was miraculous to see that transformation.
Absolutely.
Don't we see it all the time in hospitals?
Hospice. Yes.
Well, all kinds of hospitals.
Oh, hospitals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Modern medicine and ancient medicine and unexplained medicine. Healing. Yeah. Healing is a sign and wonder that leads us to believe. Again, I hate to, and I want to throw out the baby with the bathwater when I think about people online doing faith healings and stuff, and some of them, some of them doing them for attention, but healing happens for God's glory, right? We have these nice little services in our book of worship, services of healing. And this Great Thanksgiving I've been using the last couple communions comes from that service of healing, because it's focuses on the healing of people and all the time, that God is healing us, and that's been especially prevalent during this COVID time. So, healing. Yeah, Linda, one more. And don't forget to unmute.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking about how we have an important role in all of this. So it isn't just that we're the recipient of this or that other people around us are recipients of this grace and this healing, but the expectation, I think, is on us to help to hold someone's hand, to do whatever is necessary to facilitate that healing.
Yeah, exactly. One of the fun activities in a Bible story is imagining which character would I be, right? And one of the neat things we could do in here is sometimes maybe we're the royal official. Maybe you've got I know in fact, every one of you, I know your family, your family, not just you, but your family, or at least your immediate and somewhat extended families and that kind of thing. But I could say of all of us, there's that passion for the healing of your loved one. So maybe you're the royal official who wants passionately for Jesus to heal the hurt person. What if, here's one that's kind of cool that kind of might relate to what, there's Jim's dog. Well, here's one that might relate to what Linda just said. What about, what if we are the master's servants who have seen the healing and come running, and who are witnesses and can't wait to tell the news and come to believe because we have seen what God has done? I think we often find ourselves there, don't we? that signs and wonders called us.
I think Jim saw it on the sand spur.
Did you say something, Dan?
No.
Oh, what? He sneezed?
No, I'm watching Jim over there squirming, and I think he may have sat on a sand spur.
Oh, Jim, did you sit on a sand spur? You're muted. Yeah.
No, I've been doing postcards for new residents while we're talking, and I dropped my stamps. And we all know you can't play post office if you don't have stamps.
I love it, Jim. Jim plays post office. That's cool. Hey, Jim, I will brag on and give thanks for Jim. He takes up a task of looking for where people have moved into the neighborhood. He gets a sheet of people who've moved in, and he makes these cards. Hold them up. Yeah, he designed them.
Oh,
And
wow.
he sends them a card about Ann Street. Oh, I like that. You like shuffling cards. And he made him a postcard about Ann Street. And Jim invites them to come to our church.
Very good.
I know we're giving thumbs ups and virtual amens and whatever's here to send that love. God bless you. God bless you, Jim. Thank you for doing that. So, okay. We come to our special 3 questions at the end. Remember, I told you last time I'm going to ask you these little 3 questions. Okay. First question: why is this a sign? And we've touched on all these. We've answered already in some way, but let's recap. Why is this story a sign?
Points to Jesus.
What is signful of in this story?
It's the power of God over death.
Ah, yes, quite right. There it is. Right on, Sarah. That there is power of Jesus over death, and the sign is that Jesus has pulled this young man back from the point of death. Quite right. Now, the second question is, how does this sign point to Jesus as Lord?
Not too many human beings can bring somebody back from death.
Yeah, the miracle itself, I mean, for one thing, and that it was Jesus that they came to. And remember all the ways we talked about in which these come to Jesus. He's heard about Jesus somehow, somewhere, maybe from the things from Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Quite right. Maybe the word from the Cana thing actually did spread from the water and wine. Anyway, yeah, Jesus is Lord. And then finally, what do we learn from this sign because we confess Jesus as Lord? Yeah, Linda.
Well, it's comforting to me to know that we didn't have to live in Jesus's time, and we didn't have to be in his presence to be able to benefit from his power to heal.
Right.
So I feel like there's a sense of continuity here, or vision, I guess, that, you know, even though we're here in our own time, that we can benefit from it as well, and that we need to talk about those things that we have benefited from, you know, whether it be a healing in response to prayer, and I've seen that happen, or other things. So we need to talk about what those miracles and those signs in our own day. That's right. As we should, and name them. Quite right. I see you guys beginning to follow the breadcrumbs from miracle 1 to miracle 2. So you're beginning to get the sense of the thing. Yeah. And the more we awaken ourselves to that in Scripture, the more we're awakened to that around us. And we begin to be sign watchers and looking out for these things. Quite right.
Quite right. Well said. Any other answers or final thoughts or questions on this text today? It's a good study, guys. Good job. The next one is healing the paralytic at Bethsaida. John 5:1-15, which is a healing on the Sabbath, which is going to also further the narrative between Jesus and the Jews. John 5:1-15, healing of the paralytic at Bethsaida. Okay. Jim, I'm not just saying this because you're a preacher, but your prayers are heartfelt, and they do me good, my heart good, to pray with you. And I know that speak for all of us. Would you honor us with a prayer in closing today?
Lord, as we have come together to study your word, we thank you for your presence in our midst. Remind us that not only when we come together, your presence is here, but as we go apart, your presence goes with us, that we may never feel alone, but know that we are yours and you are ours. Amen.
May it be so. Amen.
Well,
Thanks, everybody. I'll see you next time, or I'll see you around town, or whatever the case may be. Okay.
Ray, you're going to be in the woods next Tuesday,
Ah,
but up, okay?
all right. Y'all have a great time. Be well.
Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right.
Merry Christmas.
To you and yours, Frank.
Yep.
Okay.